on physical evidence and led to his groundbreaking discoveries of alien implants and alien fluorescence. As a former military police officer and CIA operative, Sims has a unique insight to the alien organization which he believes functions similarly to an intelligence agency. He is also a compassionate and skilled therapist who has helped hundreds of alien experiencers all over the world come to terms with what they've witnessed. Let's bring on board the bridge of the ever-loving mothership, Daryl Sims. Welcome. Daryl? Where is Daryl Sims?
I'm here, John.
I was afraid you'd been abducted, man. I was worried for a minute.
Not lately.
Excellent. You know, you're an ex-CIA guy, yeah?
Well, I worked in the company for 2 years I volunteered during the Vietnam War, which a lot of people didn't do. They kind of went the other direction. But I was sheet dipped or picked up literally out of the military and placed into the Central Intelligence Agency for 2 years during my time with the military, and then spent my last year in the military in Korea. So that ended my 3-year tour.
Okay, so it wasn't the Vietnam thing?
No, it was not Vietnam. I actually stayed in country and helped provide security and other things for a top-secret CIA installation, which trained JOTs, or what we refer to as junior officer trainees, or basically the spies or NOCs, these people that are going to be out in the field spying and doing this sort of thing.
And you're an ex-military policeman as well?
That is correct, sir.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a couple of pretty serious lines of work there. So what in the world led you to become the alien hunter?
Well, that you might say I was a captive audience.
I get it.
By that, yeah, certainly. I didn't have a choice. I simply, I mean, the story's on my website on alienhunter.org, but basically the story is that I opened my eyes and I realized someone was in my room when I was 4 years old in Midland, Texas, and I couldn't figure out why somebody would be in my room, first of all, in our little tiny house, and it was freezing cold, wintertime, and whoever it was didn't have any clothes on. And they were awful white. And as I thought, what is that? It turned around. Apparently it heard me thinking, and it turned around and looked at me and realized it had made a mistake, that I was awake and it had failed in its purpose of me. I shouldn't know what's going on.
Right.
And I do. And when it turns around, I'm really freaked out because it doesn't have any clothes on, and I can't figure out why it's walking toward the wall anyway, because I figure it's going to bump into the wall. I didn't know it was going to go through the wall. I had no idea because I didn't see it come in. And the most interesting part of the story for me was that when it turned around, as a little boy, of course, I noticed it didn't have any clothes on. It didn't have a TT. It didn't have a belly button, and I couldn't figure out what in the world was going wrong.
Man, now that is something else. And this happened when you were 4 years old?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Look, I may be jumping around there. This is just going to be one of those conversations, just me and Daryl hanging out, and we'll just jump all over the place, and you bring us back on track, because I will pull you off track, trust me. I get the sense that these creatures can't really do much to us, but they can cause us to do things to each other. Is that closer or farther away? I mean, I understand that people have been probed and abducted and had all kinds of been implanted and everything else, but they don't seem to be. They're kind of weak when they put their spikes on.
Well, I think the best way for me to describe my position on this is to relay the idea that the alien, in my opinion, is they're not races of aliens out there. When we're talking about these 6 or 7 types of alien beings that are reported most often by the UFO community or people in general who see these entities. And by that I mean the particular entities we're looking at, first of all, generally is that little gray guy, and he stands about 3.5 feet tall. He's got an IQ of about 80. He's got a boss that looks just like him but stands taller than he is, about 5 foot tall. That guy's got an IQ of about 150. He's real intelligent. There's a mantis-like creature that stands 6.5 to 7 foot tall. He's got an IQ about 180. There's a humanoid that looks, what some people refer to as the Nordic. This guy is about 6'2", 6'4", and he's very intelligent. And then there's another creature that some people fail to put in the UFO field, but he's been seen in these events, and that is this thing called Bigfoot. And he stands about 7.5 to 8 foot tall or even taller. All these, in my opinion, are models. They are not, in fact, races of aliens.
No kidding.
The DNA comes from here, this planet.
Now, this is extraordinary. Just amplify that just a little bit. You say models.
What I mean by models is what you're looking at is something. For instance, if you go down to the Chevy store and decide you're going to buy a car, and you look at all these different cars, you say, "Well, wait a minute, what all kinds you got out there?" And they pull out 6, 7 different kinds of cars. You're looking. Those are 7 distinct different types of cars, but they're all made by the same guy, so to speak, the same company. Those are models. They're not races of anything. They're models made for the purpose of interaction with mankind, and their purpose are very, very hidden. They don't want anybody to know that. Obviously, they don't. There's a lot they don't want us to know, but they're very secretive. They're very deceptive, to say the very least. They lie, and they lie consistently. And they are in fact models. They are entities designed for the purpose of interaction with mankind.
Unbelievable. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say this before. Now, wait a minute. You hold a master's level in hypnotherapy. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
And you're also a medical hypnotic anesthetist.
That is correct.
And what really made you go after the alien was when, as an adult, you found out that your 5-year-old son was also being abducted?
That was what turned me from what most people would refer to as an experiencer, so to speak. Someone had these events and didn't want them, and just wanted it to stop and go away. And then one day, while we were at a property, we own 4 acres of property out in Huffman, Texas. It's right, literally, just a few miles down the street from where the Cash Landrum event happened, where those people were radiated by that object, and I think that was a military operation. But the point is, at about 2:30 in the morning, I realized something was tragically wrong, and I had felt that feeling, but not felt it since I was 17 years old. And I got up and ran as fast as I could. I ran past my son's room, past my daughter's room, in the living room, and there was my son standing there in a deep trance, 5 years old, looking out the back window. He's still in trance, just like I was in my bed, basically, not understanding what was going on. But the only difference is that what they did on him worked. By that I mean they programmed him that you're not supposed to remember, and he didn't remember anything until the next day. But my wife came running in there. She was looking at me, confused. What's wrong with him? What's he doing? What's going on? And finally she looks at me and says, what is it that you haven't told me? And that's when I had to belly up to the bar, so to speak, and tell her about my alien abduction experiences, and something I'd never told her before. And now my son was a victim of the same event. That changed things from an individual wanting to avoid the phenomena to the guy who basically hunts them, that hunted me, and later hunted my son.
A lot of people roll their eyes at this stuff, but there are too many accounts from too many steady people, and their stories are too much alike, and they do not know each other, and they did not get it from a television program, and none of the television programs, with the possible exception of the one I narrate called Unsealed Alien Files, has even come close to the things that these people describe as having experienced at the hands, or whatever they might be, of these creatures.
You are so right, and I think that, in fact, a Hollywood producer told me one time to want to do a motion picture on my life story, and he asked me a question. He said, before we get into all that, he said, why can't Hollywood make a really good alien movie? I said, you want the truth? And he said, yeah. I said, because you write in everything you think it's about, and you don't read the literature and keep it for what it actually is. I said, if you put these events in context, a number of these events, I guarantee you'd scare half the population out of that building, simply because half of them in there are abductees, and they're not going to sit there and watch the same thing that happened to them on a film. People want to change it. They want to make it. They want to make them, the alien, more human, more kind, more whatever. He is whatever he is. I mean, some events are not harmful, but others are. There are cases of cattle mutilations. We had a pile of them up here in Texas this last week.
You got any details on those? I'd love to hear it.
The mutilation cases that we had were out in Port Lavaca. A friend of mine is doing a colleague is doing the investigation on that, and there were about 20 sheep that were mutilated there at different times. In my opinion, based on what I've seen in the preliminary, and I haven't seen the case, I've only looked at just the general information. It appears that that's not alien related, at least most of it.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have cases, of course, that are cattle mutilations that we've discovered and worked on right here in Houston, and horse mutilations as well, that in my opinion are UFO related.
Is this the surgical precision that is virtually unknown to we Earthlings?
Well, that is true, and then often there's little or no predation. By that I mean predators will often stay away from these creatures, from the cows, the sheep, or whatever's been mutilated, and no one seems to know quite why, because, I mean, the vultures and this sort of thing here in Texas are very keen to have dinner early on that sort of thing, and they will stay away from these if they're UFO related. I think that perhaps some of the reason for that is that whatever electromagnetic or other effect that has happened to those animals is still affecting or still giving off some type of animation or some type of field or something that these animals can pick up, and they stay away from it for whatever reason.
You mentioned some people earlier who had been. It appears that they are. Were the people you were talking about that had been subjected to what you said might have been a military operation? They're the ones that wound up with radiation burns. Is it the same bunch?
That is correct. That's the cash landrum of people. There were two ladies and a little boy. They stopped. They saw a bright object come down. It was, in my opinion, a military operation. It got away from the military. About 20 helicopters were out there around it, and it got away from them. The project failed, in my opinion. Unfortunately, these people got too close to it. The lady got out and got outside her car, and she got radiated, and so did everyone else in the car, but she got it a lot worse and later died from it. But I lived about 5 miles down the road from where that event occurred, and where that object came down close and touched the road, it melted the highway, and the highway was repaired by the next day. Now, anybody that knows anything about Texas knows that you're not going to get any highway fixed ever for any reason overnight. It's not going to happen.
No.
And
right.
the highway department didn't know who did it.
They didn't know who fixed the highway.
They had no idea.
Gotcha.
This thing just gets fixed, and nobody knows who did it or why.
That's unbelievable. Now, you've been abducted yourself.
Yes, sir.
And it ended violently? We're using the word violently at age 17?
That is correct. My events were actually quite short compared to some people. By that I mean my events started in 1952 at age 4, and they ended, there was a series of them, about 10 of them, that lasted all the way up until age 17. And in my last event, it ended very violently, and I've never told anyone the events of my last event, and the reason is twofold. Is number one is because the entities that showed up in that last event, you will not find in any UFO literature. And number two, I've found 8 people so far that have had a very similar event, and they have described the entities with great detail. So I know they didn't make it up because it's not in any literature that you can copy. I mean, you can't go read it and find it and say, oh, yeah, me too. So when people tell me they've had the same event, I want to know the same. I want to know what the details are. But the interesting thing about any of this, if you're an abductee or a contactee, you think a contactee thinks these events are often favorable to them or favorable to humanity, even if you don't like it. Abductees don't agree with that. But my point is that you have to question your own events. You just do for your own sanity. How could this possibly happen? And in my last event, where these 5 entities came into the room, they kicked open the door, actually, and the fact is that the door knob and lock were broken off and laying on the floor the next morning. Interesting thing is my dad got up, looked at my door, looked at me, and strangely said, "Boy, you're a little tough on these doors." And what's interesting is no one heard a thing in the entire home during the night. I mean, no one heard a word, and that's all he said, and he walked off. I should have got in trouble for that, but I didn't do it. But that's what you look for in these events is evidence. And that was my first big hint that something seriously went wrong, and that I wasn't dreaming, that in fact it did happen.
Now, I got a question for you. How do you reconcile a doorknob on the floor and a forcible entry by these creatures? Let's just call them that.
Well, in that particular event,
and walking through walls,
they were not coming for an abduction, and they were coming for the kind of way to describe this for the audience that they might better appreciate it is to use the term MIB, or Men in Black. They weren't really like that, but they're along that league. And some people ask me, what exactly were they? I said, if I had to describe it by a term, if the alien had an SS, it would be them.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be the Enforcement Division.
The Enforcement Division. Man, this is just too much. All right. When we come back, it would really be good to know when a group of them show up, a group shows up, are they all the same, or is it a collection of different models, as you mentioned earlier? Our guest tonight, he hasn't been on the program since he was on with George Norrie on October 1, 2009. And he's back again. He is Daryl Sims. His book is Alien Hunter, The Evidence in Light. Check out his website, alienhunter.org, and stand by for more. This is the Saturday night edition of Coast to Coast AM.
All right. Daryl, are you there? We're having to go to Channel D. I'll tell you what we will do is just, let me just let you take the floor and just take the lecturer's podium and tell us when these crews of aliens show up, are they all the same? Are they all at the same time?
In my opinion, they are distinctly different in the sense that they are different models. As different as your Chevette is going to be different than a Corvette Stingray. They're different as night and day. But the fact is, they're basically the same manufacturer. The same guys are putting them together. And in my opinion, and this is after 38 years of investigating, I've come to the opinion that these entities are manufactured, designed, cloned, or hatched. And I can step backwards perhaps and give you a better illustration of that from my first event when I was very young. The first thing I noticed about the entity, besides the fact that it was cold and he was white and he was walking toward a wall, I'm going to bump into it in my opinion, when he turned around, I noticed that he didn't have any clothing on. He had as a little boy would describe it, he had a TT. He didn't have a TT. He didn't have any genitalia, in other words, and he didn't have a belly button. Well, after 38 years investigating, if you notice that people, if they don't have genitalia, they don't procreate.
Right.
And if they don't have a belly button or a navel, they weren't born. They got here some other way. They were either hatched, cloned, or manufactured.
What do you?
This is really not rocket
What
science.
in your wildest hypothetical thinking can you attribute that? I mean, is that it? They're either hatched or they're just artificially incubated?
I suspect they are, and I'll give you. I'll carry this out further. In my description, as I gave a while ago, of what I call the usual suspects, or a lineup of in police work, we line these people up that are questionable people, and we'll line them up for someone to identify a perpetrator out of the lineup. And in that case, I made my own little alien lineup there. And what I'm saying is that of those entities that I've lined up in my drawing or my illustration here for the audience, these entities are all part and parcel to the same program. They're all on the same database. They know exactly the same information. If John Wells was picked up as a boy at any age, every one of those entities knows who John Wells is. They know who Daryl Sims is. It has nothing to do with your famous or infamous. It's simply a database, and they know who you are. It's just that simple. And these entities, in my view, were again, because they have no navel, they have no genitalia. They're basically hatched, cloned, or manufactured. And we have good evidence to suggest that may be, in fact, true, at least some of these entities. In one case, one of our abductees wanted to defend herself and her children. And in the next event, they came there. I actually worked with her and helped her to defend herself because she was crying and really upset about it and begged me to help her. And so I gave her it's a powerful hypnotic suggestion, and she assaulted her captor the next time he came in and tore his black eye cover off of the little gray alien. And he came back 2 weeks later, and she did it again. My point is that underneath that eye cover, those were not really cosmic sunglasses. They were, in fact, some type of a lens cover, so to speak. And she saw a stippled red screen with 5 little white lines running across it, very much like a computer screen you might see on a heart monitor, as an example.
Good grief! You know, now, of course, you encounter this all the time, but this is beyond anything that most people have ever heard, and they have to think, come on. I mean, what is this? My Bravo Sierra meter is going off real bad here. What you know, I suppose some people are going to believe it, and some people aren't. Certainly, the ones who experienced it believe it. I mean, I've had my own little run-in with these cats. You know, the green glow, the lost time, the covering distance that cannot be covered in that length of time, particularly given the weather. The weird dream, like not the same night, but the next night, it corresponded perfectly to a description that showed up on this program called Sightings. People in the audience have heard this until they can't bear the sound of it anymore. But and then you take this photographer Wilbur Allen up there in D.C. He continues to send me photographs that are just they're clearly real, and they're quite consistent. And I asked him just the other day, in fact yesterday, I said, where's the landing zone? And he said, oh, it's right up there by where the president hangs out. I said, are you saying the White House? He goes, the White House and also the Goddard Space Center. So
I know Wilbur very well. And
well, you know, he's on the level. And
he's got some interesting photography. I really pretty impressed with some of it, I'm telling you.
Well, he said an orb, one of those little task orbs, that's what I call them. They seem to be really good at turning stuff off and on.
Yes.
Attacked his camera and almost destroyed the thing. He had to send it out to be repaired because it just fried everything, fried all the circuitry in it, much like they do when they, approach some aircraft that's been scrambled to intercept them. They just turn the panel off. It's like, wow. After a point, it becomes undeniable. These intelligent people that are flying these aircraft. And these are intelligent people like yourself and like Wilbur. And so, I mean, this is not some made-up fantastic deal. This is really happening.
It is definitely true, and I'll even cap that with a little bit more information. I'd like to make two statements. One is a description of the types of abductees and contactees that we have just in our venue alone. And second is that the difference between me and I guess other people, for your audience, for those that don't know me, and number one is I don't have I don't have any a constituency. I have no interest in causing people to believe this phenomena. I mean, it's happened to me. There's nothing I can do about it. If people don't buy into it, that's fine. If they don't, that's okay with me. I have no agenda. It just happened. There's nothing I can do about that. So the only difference between me and I guess other people is I'm the alien hunter. I hunted them that hunted me and later hunted my son. But not only that, the distinction, I guess, between me and other people, I guess, and Wilbur is an example, is a good guy. is I hunt the pilots. I don't hunt the UFOs with a camera or take photos of them. I'm looking for the pilot. I want him.
Definitely. Well, have you nailed one yet?
I thought you'd never ask. We have come close on 3 occasions to getting an entity, and toward the end of this program, I hope we'll get into some possible DNA evidence we may have of one of them. But these entities are not nearly as intelligent as some people might think they are. Again, I mentioned they were models, and they do have limited intelligence. Some are very smart, and some of them are not intelligent at all, and they make mistakes. And if you understand how it thinks, in other words, you get tired of being a victim, and you don't care about being scared or being paralyzed and all that, and you actually become a trained observer, so to speak, in your event, whether you're a contactee or abductee, whether you like it or whether you don't like it. If that is the case, then you'll start to learn things about them, and you'll start to find out how they think. You'll notice that some of them are not very intelligent at all. They make all kinds of mistakes. When they bring people back, they'll often bring people back with the wrong clothes on. They'll put the wrong clothes on the wrong people. One little girl came back with an Army field jacket. The guy that had the field jacket had a little tiny T-shirt of a 6-year-old girl. Found that a little difficult to put on. But the point is they make mistakes, and they'll drop you off in the wrong location. Sometimes they'll drop you off in the wrong bed, or they'll drop you off too high from your bed when they're bringing you back down. They'll drop you from 4 or 5 feet off the bed. You'll fall and hit the bed. It'll wake you up. You'll wonder, well, what happened? Sometimes they drop you off at the wrong house or in the wrong backyard. And, of course, that I'm sure the wife or somebody would probably say, well, that was a drinking problem. But in one case, with my former senior investigator, they dropped him and his buddy off. These are engineering types, very skilled people, very thoughtful people. They dropped them off in the wrong state, truck and all.
Yeah, some of them aren't really very good pilots either. They crash frequently.
That is true.
Anybody's liable to make a mistake, right?
Roswell's a great place to crash, I think. Not for them, but was for me.
If you don't mind talking about your son a little bit, because how did you talk him down out of that experience? And bless his heart, and I'm really kind of trying to be careful with this, Daryl, because I don't want to. That's personal stuff. When it involves blood, particularly one of your children, let alone a cousin or an uncle, that's serious stuff. But was there any evidence to suggest that they put a little tracker on your boy, a little implant of some sort? Was there any of that?
We'll talk about implants in a moment, and they're not tracking devices. The alien finds you, in my opinion, through something like a neural imprint. They know you from your. Okay, let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
To talk about my son, I have to back up just a bit. 45% of the people taken are Native American, Indian, Irish, or Celtic. 45%. That's just unbelievable.
Yes, it is.
We're Native American, Irish, and when my son was taken, when they take someone, in other words, if someone in the audience here says, well, they've only taken me and my family, just me and no one else, that's highly unlikely. It's possible, but highly unlikely. If you'll ask Grandma and Grandpa and get them alone and talk to them quietly, you'll find that someone in your family is an abductee in most cases, and they will tell you the story. In my son's case, he came to me the next morning and started talking to me about what had happened to him. He wanted me to hypnotize him and do this and do that and find out what happened in detail, and I didn't want to do it. I did everything I could to put that off, and everybody started saying, well, you need to know, and I knew what it was. I already knew, and I did not want to deal with that. I mean, I was not going to do that. And he pushed that and pushed it until finally I did. And his events were, and again, you got to realize no one in my family knew any of this. We did not tell anyone. My wife found out about it the night he got abducted. So I sit there and I listened as he told his story. And some of it he already knew consciously, and other he remembered through refreshed memory. And he described things in his event that stood the hair back on the back of my neck. And the more he spoke, I just started crying, because I realized that I was 17 years old when I met that entity, and I barely survived it. Here he
barely survived it.
Here he is, a little boy, and my tears went from tears to anger. And from that moment on, I decided I was going to hunt them.
They didn't read your resume before they decided to mess with your son.
I don't care who you are. I don't care if you believe the aliens are here to save the planet, fix the ozone hole, or whatever.
Right.
Anybody that takes children and harms children, I don't care who you're from another planet. I don't care if you're this planet. You're my enemy. If you hurt children, you're my enemy. It's that simple. I don't care who you are. You can call it anything you want to. You can call it alien abduction. You can call it helping out mankind or whatever. When you hurt children, that's all there is to it. And as a police officer, if I caught anyone hurting a child, that was it. I mean, you're going to jail. There's no question about that.
Mm-hmm.
But this is even worse, because people are telling me, well, they're superior to us and they're smarter than us. So some of these guys have an IQ of 80. What are you talking about? What do you mean? It doesn't make any sense they evolved. You mean this little guy evolved from 80, an IQ of 80, and went to 150 or 160, and he just got taller? That's it? No, these are models. This is not evolution in any sense of the word. These are models made, created, and constructed, hatched or cloned for the purpose of interaction with mankind. Now, what they're doing to mankind is anybody's guess. We have some ideas, but it's still anyone's guess.
Understood. So you're not prepared to accept that these are us coming back to visit Earth from the future.
If I ever find me out there, I'm not sure what I'd do to him. A little cosmic skinhead. I hope I look better than that, at least. The fact is that there are two different events that happen to people. Once you come into alien contact, you have contact experience. You become either like them or you don't like them. You become what I call a honeybee or a killer bee. A honeybee honeybees are like bees. They're contactees. They're kind, very gentle, good people who think the funny little man in the white suit out there stealing their honey is probably supposed to do that. Bees don't have any funny little men in white suits are supposed to be stealing their honey. On the other hand, abductees are Native American, Irish, Celtic types. I refer to as killer bees, because if you steal their honey and you come after their little ones, you're going to pay the price.
Yes, they'll get pre-medieval on you. All right, well, let's take our top of the hour news break and a couple other things and then get right back to it, shall we, Darrell?
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. The Alien Hunter. Alien Hunter, The Evidence in Light is the book. AlienHunter.org is the site. This is Coast AM. We'll be right back. Happy Saturday night. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, maybe Take Me to the Pilot would have been better by Elton John, but we'll settle for the Sinceros and Take Me to Your Leader. Probably the typical protocol would be to Hulk just completely ignore the fact that we're experiencing some technical difficulties, but we are. And Sky Chief Brian just said, "Don't worry, Commander Wells. I'll make it happen if we have to use tin cans and some string." So we have it going on. It's also in the minds of some tempting for us, that is on this end of the broadcast, to embellish and make something out of nothing. But the fact of the matter is any time that we have a controversial guest on the program, we get a little of this, but tonight we're getting a lot of it. So we'll carry on and just do the best we can here. And when the systems come back up, then the systems will come back up, and we'll keep working on them between now and then. Our guest tonight is Darrell Sims. He is the Alien Hunter, and his story is very, very compelling. We've got a long way to go. So Make yourself a proper cup of tea and come right back. This is Coast to Coast AM. Stand by. Okay, Daryl, let me ask you something. Do you find that the majority of the abductees are adults, or do these abductors target children? And if so, why do you think they do this?
They do target children, and almost everyone's events, even if they only discover them when they're older, when you work with them, you'll find invariably that most of these people were taken when they were children. The reason, and I'll make this as clear and as easy as possible, is the fact is that children are innocent, and they're impressionable, and it's easier to program children than it is adults. And abduction is still kidnapping. It always has been, always will be. You can call it anything you want, but it's still the same thing, and that's the reason they do it. It has to do with programming, and most of these people, especially contactees, will often, and many abductees too, actually believe that their parents are not their own parents. This is part of programming that these entities tell these little children when they're little, just babies, that your parents are not even your parents. We are your parents. We are in charge, and so on and so on. It's just mental brainwashing is all this is. It's just really some sick stuff, in my opinion.
It is some sick stuff, and I have to go back to the inevitably. I have to go back to the ancient text, and do you see? And if you don't, it's okay. But I have to ask: do you see what one might categorize as a religious crossover here? Do you find any correlation between coded messages that appear in Scripture with some of these things that are actually happening? It just seems like what you're suggesting is they're trying to take the humanness out of the human and just separate them from all of the fundamental elements of this reality. Starting with your parents, as you just mentioned.
That I think you've hit it pretty hard there, and accurately. That number one, that they're interested in causing a division in the family. They do this, and it gets much more complex than what we were discussing here. But to answer the second part of your question, is they're by the nature of what they do and the history of what they do, from ancient texts, from the ancient Warkans, the Sumerians, Ugaritic text, the Sanskrit, the Bible, Hebrew, Greek. It doesn't make any difference. Anywhere you read this material, you will ultimately find, even from a religious context, Christian context, Hindu, it makes no difference. When I went to Turkey, right there, I was talking to a guy on an airplane and telling about my stuff there for 8 hours, and he just loved it. And he said, "Well, we don't have any of that in Turkey." I said, "Yes, you do." He said, "No, we don't." And I said, "Tell me about the jinn of Islam." He got real scared and looked at me and said, "We don't talk about them. They might not bring you back." I said, "You got the same stuff that we have. Nothing's changed. Only the viewpoint of each culture has changed. If you're in Ireland, it's the wee little folk and the fairy folk. And if you read the real history of fairies and the wee folk that the Irish talk about, these are not friendly little people. They might not bring you back if they don't like you or you don't do what you're supposed to do. This is systemic in every culture, anywhere you go, anywhere in the world. It makes no difference what the religion is or anything else. It will be consistent in its message of taking people, again, doing the same type things to people. I've got 1,600 cases worldwide, and it makes no difference where I go, anywhere. It's almost like reading a textbook. I mean, and some of these people are, some of the cases I've had, I mean, these people were born in 1900s. A couple of cases that I had that were in Auschwitz, of all things, abductees. And I mean, one of the ladies, you could actually look at her, and she still had to mark the numbers on her arm. And these are just as clear an abductee as anybody in the world. It made no difference. These people are engineers. They're brilliant people. I've got people who are prisoners. I mean, in prison, still getting taken. In one case, the guy's guard got taken with him. We've got deaf people. We've got people from the Nation of Islam. We've got mental cases. Now, I'm sure some people will laugh about that and say, yeah, probably most of you. But the fact is, we've got mental cases that were referred to me directly from MHMR because of their abduction phenomena. They said even though they've got a mental difficulty, there is something going on with them. In fact, the doctor that referred them was an abductee herself, right at HMR here in Houston. So you're completely right in your take on that. And the next direction I think you could go from there is literally to look at it from who's next on the list to visit them. If there's a problem with abductees, if there is a difficulty and they need adjusting or they want things fixed or changed, something really radical begins to happen. And what happens is they will send what we refer to as a MIB. A MIB is an individual called Men in Black, kind of like the movie Men in Black, the tongue-in-cheek movie. But there are two kinds of MIBs, really. These MIBs are literally a surreal type, which is the real alien type, which they, believe it or not, they wear a black coat, long black coat, and a large black hat, and they absolutely baffle the abductee when they see them. They scare them. They don't know how to do. They don't know what to do with them. They're not like the alien. They're connected, but what are they? And you're looking at another bottle, but it's a milder form of the enforcement division. These guys are there to fix problems, to make things work, to get results, so to speak. And we've got plenty of evidence of this sort of thing happening. You've got another kind, and I'll only touch on this briefly, a second kind of MIB, and these are government-type people. They were especially showed up in the 1950s and 60s and intimidated a lot of UFO witnesses. And these government-type people, sponsored by the government, would question people and so on and so on. Recently, and this is all I'm going to say about it, one of my abductees was contacted by one of these MIB types, a government MIB. And I don't mean alien, I mean the government style. And later, whenever I finish with that case, I'll report back to you, John, and let you know what exactly happened. But I think there's going to be some evidence in that, some real, actual physical evidence of the government involvement in that program.
Clearly, the government knows that these UFOs exist. There have been stories circulating for years, and now they're resurfacing. And again, they've been put into some of the episodes, unsealed alien files about a meeting between President Eisenhower twice with aliens in New Mexico. So, I mean,
the story has a great deal of credibility to it, and I lived in, believe it or not, you're not even going to believe where I lived. For 13 years, I lived in Alamogordo, New Mexico. And guess what Air Force Base is right next door? Holloman Air Force Base, where the event took place that you just described.
Yeah, this is very interesting. So there are two types of the Men in Black. The ones that are, I suppose, they're human. They're just government agents, and then there are the other ones that I understand. If you don't comply, I mean, people have said that if you don't comply with their requests, they become really agitated and confused, and they really don't know what to do if you resist them. Is any of this in your experience?
It is true, and I actually can give you a couple of illustrations from my daughter-in-law fled Brazil to come to the United States to get away from the alien phenomena.
Oh, Lord.
She came and stayed with us for a while. My wife and I agreed to let her come in. Of course, she wasn't her daughter-in-law then. She was just an individual that I'd met in Brazil. And she begged us to stay for just a while with us and so on. We agreed. And anyway, she had two sets of events I want to tell you about. One of them, it's going to match exactly what you said in the beginning about was there a religious context to it? There was. And the second one deals with the MIB specifically and even more. The first one, her abductions always occur on the third month, third day at 3 a.m. Now that's rather interesting, and they occur in threes. There are going to be three events. 3 days in a row at 3 a.m. And their first encounter, it happened, we woke up the next morning and she was crying uncontrollably. And she had apparently been crying half the night and wouldn't tell us anything. And we woke up and she was crying. And I said, what is the problem? She's crying and she kept talking about they came. She thought she had gotten away from them. Fleeing Brazil, coming here would do it, but they followed her. And she was terrified, and she picked up a piece of stove wood from our fireplace and acted like she was going to hit this entity. And he backed off, and he left. But she was still scared and holding her firewood for a long time. And she told me, she said, I said, well, it's okay. It's all over. Maybe it was a bad dream or whatever. I try to console her with all that stupid stuff that people like to tell people that just isn't true. And she says, but my events always happen in threes. They'll be back tonight. And I said, well, I will be awake tonight. And I, the alien hunter, will be there. So we'll see what happens. So I'm hoping, well, this will be cool. Something's going on in my own house. I look forward to this. Let's rock.
Right.
So anyway, I'm working on the computer about 2 in the morning and trying to stay awake. And I get thinking, wait a minute. If this is going to happen 3 times, why waste the event? Why not try something spiritual just to see if something happens? If it doesn't, so what? If it does, then I found something out that's investigations. That's what it's all about. So I prayed about that event, and I absolutely felt 100% comfortable that the Lord would actually take care of her, and it would be okay. And most people say, that's crazy. You shouldn't have done that. Well, I did, because it's been my experience before, whenever this peace that passes all understanding comes upon you after prayer, that there's something really remarkably good going to happen. Anyway, next morning, we wake up, and she's crying. So she's crying, going on, and I thought, oh my gosh, I thought you were going to be awake. And I said, I was, but I thought, she said, but let me tell you what happened. And I said, okay, what happened? She said, it came through the wall again. And I said, okay. And she said, I picked up the firewood again. I was going to hit it, and it backed off. And she said, something so evil, I had never in my life known anything like it. I didn't know something like that existed. It came through the wall after him. And I said, what'd you do then? She said, I was so scared I dropped the firewood, and I was just shaking. And she said, I did not know what to do. I wasn't paralyzed. I wasn't asleep. I'm standing up with a piece of firewood looking at this thing. She said, I've never seen evil before in a personage. And she said, and then she started crying. I said, what? And my wife looked at me confused, and she said, the young girl said, an angel came through the wall. And she said, you can't imagine how fast those 2 entities got out of that room. I said, are you absolutely? She said, I'm telling you, it was an angel. And well, so it's fascinating to me, and we've had this happen in rare events, where an angelic will show up during an abduction. If that happens, it'll ruin the abduction event, and I guarantee you will not have an alien problem that day.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with one of them. Not according to Scripture, you don't.
No.
Well, let me ask you this. Was she able to describe what this angel looked like?
It was, she made me a drawing of it, actually. I should probably post that.
Yes.
But it was angelic. There was no question about it. And the third night was what was fascinating, because I realized, I said, I promise you on a stack of Bibles, I will be there. I will not go. I don't care who tells me what or what happens. I will be there. I will be there at 3 a.m. and I will be there. And so, and she slept on a little pallet in our living room. And anyway, 2:30 in the morning, I grabbed my razor sharp Japanese sword that's had over $1,000 worth of work done on the blade alone.
Understood.
And I'm sitting there next to her, and she sits up at 2:45 in the morning, breathing, scared and everything. And I looked at her, and I reached over and touched her on the forehead, and I said, "It's all right. I'm here." She lays back down, and I tell her to go to sleep. And I'm sitting there waiting, hoping that Mr. Cosmic Skinhead wants to come through the wall and scare me. Go ahead and, give it your best shot. Anyway, I'm sitting there, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, she sets up exactly, because I'm looking at my watch. 3 o'clock in the morning, she sets up in slow motion, in a deep trance, looks over at me and says, "They know you're here." And I said, "Yes, sweetie." I said, "Now they know I'm here, and I know that they know that I know, and I know that they know that I'm here." And it's amazing to me that they don't have enough courage to come through that wall and do some of the things to me they used to do when I was a kid. Well, I'm not 4 years old anymore. I'm not 10 years old anymore. I'm older. I'm a killer bee now. I'm not a honey bee. You're not going to steal the honey and get away with it. You're going to pay the price. I said, one of these days, when these cosmic skinheads are going to find himself on the other wrong side of that wall, and I'll be waiting for him. After that, I stayed with her for a while, and she laid back down, went to sleep, and I went back to bed and told my wife what was going on, and that ended her event. However, this is the MIB event. A few months later, I've got a bunch of boxes of books and papers and tons of stuff. I'm working on my first book. And she said, "May I help you work on help you assemble it in some way?" And I said, "Please do." I said, I gave her some instructions. I said, "I'm going to go. My wife is waiting for me, and we're going to go eat lunch." And all of a sudden, she got real scared, and she says, "Please, if you decide to go to a movie or something please call me and let me know where you're going to be, because I just feel real scared." And abductees will often know when their events are going to come. They will sense it at night before the event. They'll get scared. They'll get phobic, or even during the day. Many of these events will happen in daytime as well. It isn't sleep paralysis. I'm sorry, some of these therapists, you really got it wrong. Anyway, so I go to lunch. I lock the door, leave, go to lunch, meet with my wife. We're eating lunch, a couple of fish, really good sandwiches, and they have it on paper, large paper setting where we're at, and that's kind of important for the story. All of a sudden, we're sitting there talking, having a good time, just drinking our tea and eating the fish, and all of a sudden I said, "Oh my God, they're in our home." She said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Doris, they're in our home right now." And I grabbed all the food, and this is insane. I grabbed all the food, let's grab the drinks, and we ran out to the car. I got in the car, handed all the food to her, and drove as fast as I could to get home. While I was on the way home, a MIB, had she heard a knock on the door after I'd left, and she started to lean up on the couch to get up, and she looked up. Just as she looked up, there was a guy standing there with a large black brim hat with large black coat, very tall, standing there looking at her with she said it kind of looked like a book or a computer or laptop, but it wasn't. She said, and he kept telling me, look at this, pay attention to me, look at this. And trying to focus her and to hypnotize her into whatever he was going to do. And she kept looking around, and finally she jumped one way, and then he moved, and she jumped the other way, and she looked and saw the bolt had still been thrown in the door. He did not walk in the door. That lock was still locked on the door. She had much enough consciousness to understand that.
That is unbelievable. All right, let's take a little break here. I'll tell you what, the time is just speeding by, and we've got a lot more to come. So everybody just hold your position. We'll be right back with Daryl Sims. All right, Daryl Sims, Alien Hunter, you've got the left seat, so just take it away.
All right. I'll tell you, these radio circumstances, I'm telling you, I've never seen anything like it. Every time I seem to get on these programs, there is a difficulty, either with somebody's equipment or mine, and it's beyond the pale when you see this over and over. But to finish up our story, and then I want to tell you a second thing about a wonderful TV program coming on. It's going to be really neat. To finish up our story, about the MIB, they imitated the young lady had lived with us for quite a while, and she had met my son. They fell in love with each other, and were going to get married. And anyway, long story short, is they imitated his cologne and tried to make her think that he was there, and trying to get her to allow them to remove an implant from her head. And of course, she didn't know she even had one. She's like, she couldn't figure this out. And the second entity showed up to enforce that This entity was bigger than the MIB, even taller, and looked different. And she described him, and my hair stood up on the back of my neck because that was one of the entities in my last event. And again, he doesn't show up in UFO literature. So here I am getting things confirmed about my own event by people who weren't even alive when my events occurred. This is just amazing to me. So they removed an implant from her ear, and my wife and I came rushing in. We literally unlocked the door and came in, and she was walking around incoherent with blood all caked down her neck, and it was the biggest mess you've ever seen. She was terrified, incoherent, and so on. And I told my wife, take her in the bathroom, search her, and find a scratch cutter on her, find out where that blood's coming from. And we could find no incision, no place whatsoever, but she described the biological implant that was removed from her ear, approximately 5 inches long, about as thick as a pencil lead. And it's the first time I'd ever seen one like it. And, of course, the reason we think they did that was because of my implant research, and I think they thought I was going to figure out that she had one and find it. And, of course, after 24 surgeries thus far on people all over the United States, and now we're doing some in Brazil, removing these alleged alien implants, you can just imagine that this is the most unusual implant I'd ever heard of at the time. And for those that want to understand implants and that sort of thing, you go to my website at alienhunter.org, and you can click on books, and there are 2 books there, but better, even more fun if you like, is click on the videos that are there, and you can actually see an implant in someone's hand at the Roswell Museum while I'm doing an examination on the individual at the museum itself. I'm a board member at the Roswell Museum, and I do implant and other presentations there every year.
What do these implants look like, Daryl?
They look like all kinds of things, John, just really bizarre-looking stuff. Everything from tiny, tiny spheres that are placed inside your nasal passage. That happened to me when I was 12 years old in 1960. That's how I discovered the alien implant, not because I was particularly smart or a good cop or anything else. I simply was present during the event, and I remembered it. Some of these little objects are very, very small and about the size of a pinhead, and they're gold spheres. Sometimes as many as 4 at a time are placed in a child's nasal passage. Some of them are, on my book, you see one as large as a lifesaver inside a woman's skull, inside her brain, and the implant itself, within 2 years, moves over to the other side of the brain. And shortly after that, it disappears altogether. It's absolutely amazing stuff to me. I'm just floored at the stuff we found in the implant work, and the evidence, physical evidence we're finding in these cases is what makes everything real to me. I mean, I know the events are real because I was there, I saw it, and I see what's going on with these people is exactly what happened to me and other people. But more important than that is something rather remarkable. There's evidence. There is actual evidence. If you know what you're looking for, if you know how that alien thinks, if you understand his logic, and you understand how he's made and how he processes his data, you can understand a lot about his flaws and actually capitalize on his mistakes and his lack of intelligence, and in some cases, their over exuberance and their cockiness, because some of them are so smart they don't think that anybody can do anything. And that is going to be their undoing, in my opinion. But the last thing I want to tell you is something really, really wonderful. We're doing a show for Animal Planet. It's a 4-part series involving UFO alien investigations. It's called Uncovering Aliens. And it is a fun, very serious show, but a lot of fun in it, and the cast is, they couldn't have got, in my opinion, a better cast. We've got a really dynamic group of people, 4 people. A friend of Coast to Coast, by the way, is an aeronautical engineer, Mike Barra. He's an outspoken critic of the malevolence of the alien agenda. And I'm telling you, sometimes Mike says stuff that I just grit my teeth, and although I believe it myself, he just can hardly stand it when people are telling him things that are just off the charts incorrect about how friendly the alien is, how they're here to save the planet and fix the ozone hole or whatever. And anyway, it's a good dynamic with him. He's a really good character for the investigation. There is an aeronautical engineer, so this is great. And the next one is a UFO journalist, Maureen Ellsbury. Now, this gal is sharp as a razor. She has great interviewing skills, very fair-minded in her approach, and the audience is just going to love her. They're just going to love her. She's very sharp, very clear-headed, a typical journalist, a very good journalist, and I like their approach. I really do.
Daryl, can you talk a little bit about the DNA evidence that you may be able to bring forward?
Yes, I certainly can. The DNA evidence. Concerning DNA, we have, you remember the story I told you about me waiting for that alien at our home with the Japanese sword?
Yes.
Well, one of my abductees read that, and years later realized that he got tired of them taking him and his wife, and he didn't know what to do, so he decided to get him a Japanese sword and just wait, hoping one day that they would make a mistake, which they do. And in that case, he certainly they forgot to tell him, you won't remember, and you're paralyzed. Well, that night that they didn't say that, he had his Japanese sword waiting next to his bed. And when they approached him, he jumped up, grabbed the sword, and impaled one of them with it. Now, whether your audience or anyone believes that story or not is irrelevant to me, because what it matters is that whatever it is he did that night with whatever was in that room, we have the DNA of it. And according to Dr. Leftwich, who studied some of the evidence, according to him, and most of you know, Dr. Leftwich passed away I think about a week ago. Yeah. And he was speaking to me and speaking to my abductee, and what he said to my abductee and the abductee relayed to me, and obviously I'd had conversations with him as well, so I knew the same thing was true. The doctor said that he was exceptionally excited, and he says, "You've done it. You have provided the smoking gun." And my abductee told him, "No, I had a sword. I didn't have a gun." His little tongue-in-cheek there. And Dr. Levengood said, "The sample you sent me is the only tangible biological evidence that exists to link cattle mutilation samples that I personally studied of the aliens, and the gray aliens and specifically." He said, "You have both kinds of DNA here, apparently the cattle and the aliens' DNA.
Excellent.
Proteins and enzymes are some type of plant material perfectly match the samples we've gathered for 35 years. So we're really excited about what we've got so far, and at a later time, when we have time, I'll go into a great deal more discussion about what it is we're finding and what this evidence turns out to be, because we're working on it now and attempting to get some DNA work done on that. And as you know, our work is philanthropic. We don't charge our abductees a dime for anything. The surgeries we've done, the 24 surgeries thus far, everything we do is free to these people. Anything I can provide free, I do for every one of them, because I can't charge money to people who've gone through the same nightmare that I went through. And I don't mind people that do. They're going to earn their money, but I can't personally do it. It just doesn't work for me.
So DNA is common between extraterrestrials, or wherever they may come from, interdimensionals, and humans.
Well, in my opinion, yes, because in my opinion, as I said before, and I'll go into this much more detail. If you'll have me back on, I'll go into detail about who these entities are and where their DNA comes from, and I'll give you a big hint. The DNA comes from planet Earth, not from outer space. And I think I may be able to make the case.
What would this mean?
What it means is that someone has come a long, long way. Let's suppose the alien comes from outer space or time or wherever he comes from. Whatever a person's belief is, the point is that I think everyone can agree on is someone came from a long, long, long way to get whatever it is you have. In other words, if we may not be the pond scum that some of these people and scientists and others seem to think that we are, that we're just barely crawled out of the mud, so to speak, and barely evolved enough to do anything, I don't think that's even remotely close. I think the fact that we are so unique that someone out there, wherever that is or whatever it is, has come a long way to get whatever it is we have, and they don't have it. Now, if they're superior to us in every way and the millions of light years ahead of us and so on, why is it that they need what it is we have? Isn't that fascinating? And they've been here for about 6,000 years. And their program, in my opinion, based on what they have revealed to some of our abductees, is about over. I don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't. You know, this kind of ties in with the old Sumerian writings, doesn't it?
It does, for fact. The fact is that I don't care if you believe they came here to save the planet and you're one of these contactees. It makes no difference to me. In the Sumerian version of this thing, they came here and took mankind and made slaves of them to mine gold for them. If that story is true, they weren't very nice back then either. Every population, every ancient culture, the Aztecs, Toltecs, Olmecs, ancient Egyptians, every one of these cultures that had contact with these entities, and I'll go into that a lot more when I come back. Every one of those ancient cultures are now extinct. And now we're the smart guys on the block. Makes me wonder what we're up for.
Now, this is a little off topic, but I have to ask, is anybody ever ex-CIA?
Oh, I hear this a lot from people. They'll tell me, you can't be ex-CIA because because they kill you as soon as you're finished with your job. I said, really? I said, well, why are all these people retired and living? Right. And I said, well, you got to be spying. I said, well, I'll tell you what. I said, I get accused of that by some of these clowns. I said, I wish somebody would send me a check and pay me for being the spy. I never was, because I just don't get paid. And I've had a couple of my competitors out there in the UFO field say, well, you got to be a spy for the CIA. And I said, well, I'm not doing a very good job of it, because I'm telling everybody that are the state secrets. Why would I be doing that? Because I don't believe that the CIA or anybody else has a right, or the NSA or anyone has the right to hide this information from us. I understand perfectly that we're in a lot of trouble, and I know that they know that. I understand that. But the fact is, this information belongs to all of us. And I don't mean the USA, I mean humanity. We all have the right to know and understand what we're up against. I don't care how many people have been fooled by it or love it and think that they're here to save our planet or whatever. They haven't saved anybody or done anything from anyone. In fact, when you look at my medical presentation, which I show only to doctors and medical people or investigators in that field, and you look at the human and animal mutilations that I have, and you will not find these on the internet that I'm talking about. When you see this kind of stuff, it makes you relook at that and revisit that whole entire phenomena and think, my God, what in the world is going on? These are not aliens out there to save the planet or to help us do anything. They're here for some other agenda. And on top of all of that, these little guys are not in charge of anything. They're doing what they're being told by someone else.
Do you think we're about to meet them on a grander scale? And actually, this was a two-part question. The first part is, are these abductions increasing in frequency? And do you think we're about to meet them? I personally do.
I think that there's something big on the horizon. I can tell you that just from my own personal information. I have over 1,600 cases worldwide. I'm privy to some information that some of these alien entities don't realize abductees can overhear. they think that they're switching them off and they can't hear or understand anything. But the fact is, one of the reasons they give you a screen memory or cover your memory or try to in your events is because you saw or heard things you were not supposed to hear or see. And some of those things I've uncovered and found and done some really, really good work with that. And in my opinion, it's coming to a head. Whatever it is, it's coming to a head. There's no question about that. We're in for it, whatever that
All right.
is.
And let me ask you one more thing. Is there any advice you can give to anyone who may be abducted in the future as to how they can hold on to their memory of the event and how to protect themselves psychologically from the effects of an abduction?
If you're an abductee, you're a person that comes into contact, or your children do this sort of thing, and you want to help your children, my best advice to you, and because it's going to mean a lot more to the people who are involved in this, if you will simply email me, go to my website at alienhunter.org and click on Alien Hunter there, go through the site and look at everything, but email me personally and say, send me the information on how to defend myself. I'll send you about a dozen things that you can do to defend yourself. All kinds of things that will fit your belief system. Some, if you're a Christian, it'll fit your belief system. If you're not a Christian, it'll fit your belief system. If you're Hindu, it'll fit your belief system. I've got things for everybody. It's great stuff, and some of the stuff is wonderful.
Well, all right. So we've got a couple of minutes here. What's the next step for you? Is this to follow up on the DNA sample?
Oh, it is. We have... Our whole interest in this business is physical evidence. I mean, not that I have to have physical evidence to prove to me anything, because I already know it's true, and I already know enough about what's going on for 38 years of investigating. I get it. But the fact is that we need evidence to tell us a great deal of information, more very specific things that we need to know, and obviously to bring the scientific and medical community into the field as well, so that they will look at this with a very different eye.
Daryl, thank you very much for being with us on the program tonight. We will bring you back soon. I have your contact numbers, and I'll give you a call during the week, and we'll get you back on the program as soon as we possibly can, okay?
I look forward to hearing from you personally.
Thank you very much. That's Daryl Sims. He is the Alien Hunter, and his book, Alien Hunter, The Evidence in Light. His website is alienhunter.org. Sorry about the poor transmission quality tonight, but as we say out here in space, stuff happens. Take care. I'll talk to you later. This is Coast to Coast AM.
Was there ever a better band ever? It's just amazing. Some people will say, I don't like the Beatles at all. They're just like, and I'm like, stop right there. I'm not a violent man, but if you say anything ugly about them, I may become one. John B. Wells in for George Norrie tonight, who is taking the night off and leaving me with you, which I'm delighted to do. It's an open line euphonic Friday, so as I like to say, from the Yukon to the Yucatan, from Europe to Utah, and all points in between. Calls are lined up from Hollywood, California to Texas, New Jersey, and Minnesota, and we're going to get to each and every one of them if you'll just hang in there with me for just a minute on the other side of this break. Here it comes. This is Coast to Coast AM. Welcome back to Coast. John Wells in for George Norrie, and let's bring Vicki in Hollywood on the wild card line onto the main deck of the mothership. Vicki, are you there?
Yes, I am, and thank you for taking my call. I love listening to your voice. It sounds so peaceful, mature, and humble.
Good grief. Thank you very much.
And I love the topics that you cover because you bring out a lot of truth. You bring out more truth than some of the other folks who do this show.
Well, I'd like to say sometimes, just as a qualifier, I'm inclined to ask a question, and I don't know which will be less discreet, the question or the potential answer. But what's on your mind tonight?
Well, I'm responding from your guest that you just had. I had a funny little thing happen to me this week. I went to Santa Monica to take care of some letters that needed to be written in the Santa Monica Law Library. And I heard one time Art Linkletter said, if you want to make God laugh, tell him what your plans are.
Yeah.
And I had that experience. I was like determined to do these letters for some legal work, and I end up at the nativity scenes in that little park area by the beach, where the atheists took over.
Yes.
And I was inspired to make a pretty little sign that said it's all about Jesus when I read one of the displays about how Christ was nothing but a myth. And next thing I know, I had tons of people all around me, and I had the media all over me, and LA Times and Fox News 11, and I was like, well, gosh, I had no, intention on, drawing all this on me, but I had some people call me for interviews about what I was doing, and after I listened to your guest, I just felt so fed to go out and continue. And right now I'm really relating to Gideon, who was a weak, feeble man in his basement stomping on wheat and kind of hiding from the enemy, and God sent him out on a great, great mission. And I'm just this weak, feeble woman with fibromyalgia and a lot of pain in my body, but I was so overwhelmed with the joy of Jesus that I didn't even feel the pain, and I went out there and held my arms up all day long with a sign that says, it's all about Jesus. And they plastered it all over the front page of the LA Times yesterday.
Thanks very much for your call. And if that brings you joy, then that's what you need to do. Sometimes I read these emails, which, by the way, you can send me one because it's just you and me now. Our guest has moved on, and it was really good talking with Mark Anthony. I hope he comes back soon. That's John B. at coasttocoastam.com. There are two things that'll get you in trouble quicker than just about anything unless you make a career out of it, in which case you're getting paid for it, and that's discussing religion and politics. And many people have expressed their opinion that can't really get into this religion thing too much because that sort of violates the spirit of the show, which is, paranormal and the unexplained. Now, my view of the world is I can't think of anything much more paranormal or unexplainable than our existence here. When I see some of the things going on in the world, I have to ask myself, now, where are we? Why are these people taking such delight in making strange images of what was already weird? And then, of course, the Suleiman who called a while ago talking about visions of nuclear disaster and so forth. And there are some people out there, and we've discussed this many times, that just really want to watch the world burn, and nothing would make them happier. Those are the ones that we have to fight against. We're not supposed to be just passively accepting of that form of annihilation. But I do find it interesting that when politics then becomes intertwined with religion, the current administration has just put out their Christmas card. The news report today indicating that Bo, the dog, he was not able to put his paw print on the Christmas card. And then the next story is that the PC police have threatened members of the House of Representatives against wishing constituents a Merry Christmas if they want to do so in a mailing paid for with tax dollars. So I'll say this once and I'll be done. People are wearing out this separation of church and state thing. Henry VIII wanted to dump Catherine, divorce her, and so he separated from the Church of Rome, made his own church. We're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to establish a church of the United States as there is the old COE. That would be the Church of England, and that's the beginning and end of that. So, I don't know. They sure blow a lot of dough on other things. I can't imagine that sending a Christmas or otherwise a seasonal greeting to your constituents I mean, maybe such a thing would that would be using our tax dollars to keep the postal system from going bankrupt because, well, I understand they're in the red again this year to the tune of several billions of dollars. So let's go east of the Rockies to Sharon in Stockdale, Texas. Are you there, Sharon, or did you give up on us? I hear something. Okay, forget about it. Let's talk to Steve in New Jersey.
Hello?
Hello, how are you?
Hi, I think you're doing a great job, John B. Wells.
Well, thanks. I'm hanging in here by bloody fingernails.
Well,
it's on your mind tonight.
I wanted to put a message out there for all these warmongers and all of the people of Coast. To every morning when you wake up or when it hits you during the day or just before you go to bed, maybe all 3 times, just think of the earth and all the people and wish them love, peace, harmony, and forgiveness. I think that will help with mass consciousness.
Well, that's a pretty good message. It's funny. People go, oh, love, you're going to love us out of everything, right? It's like they make it sound as though love is this wimpy little sort of extra appendage of an emotion that has no power. It's the most powerful force that there is. And that's an excellent message. And thank you very much for passing it along to us, Steve. What about Rob in Brainerd, Minnesota?
Hi.
Hey, how are you tonight?
Great. How are you? So I got a comment and a question. So
okay.
A couple of weeks ago, I was listening, and I was pretty sure it was Ian Punnett was on, and there was a caller from St. Cloud, Minnesota, and he was talking about the night before he had seen this light in the sky, like a star, and then it moved, and it was gone. I seen the exact same thing. It was just kind of crazy. And then I had a question. You were a couple of days ago, I was listening. You were hosting, and you were talking about there's something else now in the chemtrails.
Oh, yes.
Topic thing. What is that?
Well, I've been watching these things since about 1998. Mm-hmm. I've been amazed that I said, what do you make of that? And finally, I walked up to the car window at the post office. I said, ma'am, excuse me. I just want to ask you a question. I'll keep my distance. She goes, oh, that's all right. And she must have been 90. And I said, do you notice these things up in the, I think I've told the story before, but not everybody got the message. So if I'm giving you a rerun, I apologize. I'll be brief. But I said, do you notice these unusual trails in the sky? And she looked at me with this little grandmotherly grin, and she said, yes, I do. And it's not normal, but at my age, it doesn't really do a lot of good for me to be overly concerned about it. So I started getting into this thing, and of course, it's pretty much established that there's aluminum oxide in them and barium in them and so forth. And I noticed that people seem to, in about 48 hours after a really good dose of this stuff, if anybody else observes this, I would be validated or repudiated, one or the other, if you would send an email and just let me know what your observations are. But it takes about 2 days for this to happen. And if you're looking at people in traffic, they are not gesturing with their fingers. They are not blowing their horns. They are not being aggressive in any way. They are sort of like behaving a little bit like ants that are on the same trail, but there are a bunch of them going in both directions. So they're sort of bumping into each other a little bit and kind of going, oh, you're an ant, okay, and they go around. They're getting along, but they seem just ever so slightly, not really disoriented, but just more toddling than disoriented. Then, of course, come the respiratory infections and the sinus infections and so forth. So it's like, okay, what could this be for? Is it weather manipulation? Is it some sort of, you hear Monsanto is developing aluminum-resistant seeds and so forth. So it's like, oh, they're going to control the food. Okay, all right. But these things are very seldom what we think that they are, because there are very, very clever people who are in charge of these projects, whatever their intention is. And in fact, I may have told this one also too, but I'll tell it again to anybody who didn't hear it. This was related to me by Eddie Z, who used to be in this part of the world and would accompany me to these coast-to-coast sessions. And he spoke with a young woman. So this is like this. I'm 3 deep from this now, but he's accurate and it sounds plausible. She was his friend, a woman, was in a position to speak with a a very high-ranking military person. And she asked this military person, what is this? It's undeniable that they're there. They're not condensation trails. Condensation trails disappear after a while. These do not. They linger around for hours and hours. And he was a general. And he said, young lady, tell me something. What color was the sunlight when you were a teenager? And she said, well, it was rather yellow, or had a kind of a gold tint to it. He said, that's correct. He said, now what color is the sun now? She says, well, the light is rather white and somewhat gray. And he just smiled wanly and said, we're looking after you. Okay, maybe that's fine. However, there has been a recent news story. I believe I read it on the last. In fact, I'm going to look for it. Maybe I can toss a little bit out here, but it's way deep into old news now. But it is possible to activate certain metals and crystals by the application of electromagnetic radiation. This sort of thing this technique can change behavior. It can make people docile. All of these technologies are under development right now, and please keep in mind at all times. I mean, don't drive yourself nuts with it, but please understand, the fax machine was invented in the 1800s. This is true. The Navy's been using them since the 50s. The citizens didn't get them until the 80s. So everything that we think of as current contemporary technology is at least 30 and quite possibly as many as 40 years behind what actually exists. So anybody that's got the idea that we're going to survive the apocalypse by, camping out with a few MREs and our deer rifles, that's not going to work. In fact, if it is an I'm going to go out on the clothesline a little bit here. If it is, in fact, electromagnetic radiation that is the core driver of mass population manipulation, then enhanced electromagnetic countermeasures of the mental sort might be the only defense against it. Now, if you get a nice big dose of it, well, what could they do? The other part is that in this news report, these metals and crystals were to be put surreptitiously into vaccines. So now, is this supposed to scare everybody off from getting a vaccine? We eliminated many, many diseases through vaccines. I've always questioned the flu vaccine. If the flu, medical officials have admitted, well, we get a different strain of flu almost every year. So my question is, what exactly are we vaccinating against? The swine flu thing. Oh, it's swine flu. Nothing much happened. Oh, it's bird flu, avian flu. Nothing much happened. So there's really no predicting which report is going to be the false flag and which is going to be the straight information. But I think probably a better way to get metallic particles and crystals into the human body would be to do a massive aerosol spraying of them. I would think that consistent inhaling of these particles might go a long way to saturating your system with these particles, which are now nano-sized, to go back to his question. And so there it is. The only solution to the problems that we are going to be faced with, and which we are, in fact, now being faced with, are control of politicians and become smarter. Read everything. Put the pieces together. Just like that movie, A Beautiful Mind. Maybe you've seen it. John Nash, genius guy, schizophrenia sufferer. He's looking at a page, but he seems to see a secret message there because certain words pop out at him. But what we have to do is even more important. Let's say there's a jigsaw puzzle, and it's a big pile of pieces. The first thing we have to do is understand that not all of these pieces go to the puzzle. There are only certain pieces that go to the puzzle. First, we have to determine what they are, and then assemble the puzzle. Is this making any sense whatsoever? Well, I certainly hope so. Jim, Wildcard in Ohio, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
I sure can. How are you tonight, sir?
Hey, good. I enjoy listening to you whenever I'm up at this hour. The one thing I didn't tell your screener about my calls, I am a Roman Catholic since birth in 1953. I was born in 1953. And I wanted to address the question that the fellow with the Hispanic accent asked your guest, which he said, why doesn't the Vatican and Pope Benedict XVI stand up against the encroaching banking powers that are, pulling off the bailouts and all that kind of stuff? And there is a fairly articulate thesis that in 1958 there was a takeover of the Vatican. It is a historical fact that there were 5 minutes of white smoke that came up on October 26, 1958. That was 17 days after Pope Pius XII died, but no pope came out. 2 days later, Pope John the 23rd came out and was hailed as Good Pope John by the world press. Now, any Catholic that is, and we might add to make this relevant to what the guy asked. A few months ago, you might have seen that Benedict XVI called for a World Bank. Did you happen to see that in the news?
I just got a passing glimpse of it, yes.
Okay, he called for a World Bank. Now, here's what I would say is happening, and I don't know if it's within the rules for me to give Google search words or a website that I promise you has no advertisements or trying to make money on it, but the thesis is this. The cardinals were threatened by a nuclear threat in the conclave. The Cardinal Siri was elected, was pushed aside. 2 days later, John the 23rd came out, and ever since then, every Catholic of my age knows the Mass, the sacraments, the architect of the churches, the catechisms, everything has been changed since 1958, especially around Vatican II. Now, people may like that or not like it, but everyone knows that there has been massive changes. So I believe what several particular authors have said, that's what happened, that the Vatican is now run by the encroaching banking systems that are oppressing the world. They've been in total control since '58. And if I could say one other thing, we're in the eclipse of the church according to this thesis. This is where the Vatican would be taken over. We're going to go into church and state are going to sink, and it's going to end in 3 days of darkness where a tail of a comet comes through the earth, perhaps.
Oh, boy.
But after that, we will have...
Hold, Jim, you hold the line, all right? I'm going to get back to you. We got a hard break coming up. Wells in for Nori. This is Coast to Coast AM. Now, Jim, you stay there. Just a couple of quick things. Consider becoming a Coast Insider. You're going to have a lot of fun with this. It's inexpensive. It's easy to use. You got 3 years of past programs, and so if you can't hang in here for the whole 4 hours, which of course we hope you do, but in case you don't have that kind of time at your disposal for listening when you need to be sleeping so that you don't, have a boo-boo at the workplace the next day. It's a great service, and you will enjoy it very much. Be sure to check the Coast homepage whenever you can, because there's all kinds of news and information on there, and it's amazing how many people who listen to Coast regularly don't really visit the homepage that much, but should, because you're missing a lot of stuff. One more thing, and that is that, the mothership's chaplain, Ian Punnett, has some ear trouble, and he has relinquished his seat effective January 2012, to me. I'll be in with you on Saturday nights, commencing, I believe, the 7th. Yes, it is the 7th. So send some good vibrations to Ian. He's got a terrible case of tinnitus, which is just a debilitating ear thing, and he's a tough guy because he continues to go forward. He continues to do his morning show, and he'll be doing the second Sunday of every month. So he'll still be with us, but send some good vibes his way. And we're going to finish up with Jim here in a minute, and then get as many of your calls as we possibly can between now and and the time that our Plentium 06 turns into Depletium 58. So please stand by. John Wells in for George Norrie, and this is Coast to Coast AM. All right, Jim, did you just pass out and go, oh man, you give an aspirin an headache, or are you still there?
No, I didn't pass out at all.
Okay, good. Good. Finish your thought on that about how the church is changing and so forth.
Yeah. In other words, I'm trying to figure out what to encapsulate here in a few seconds, but the church is in eclipse is a long-time prophecy. There's a book called Catholic Prophecy that goes into them, and I guess I would like to throw out here real quick the election and shoving aside of Cardinal Siri, that's S-I-R-I in 1958, is mentioned by a coast-to-coast favorite, Malachi Martin, in a book before he died called. His book is called daggone, I'm having a brain glitch here. But Malachi Martin's book, on this book, page 6, the keys of this blood. It's the keys of this blood. The keys of this blood, pages 600 to 610. He talks about Siri being elected, shoved aside, And Paul L. Williams, who's a famous author on the War on Terror, he wrote a book called The Vatican Exposed. Now, he's not a Catholic and he's not anti-Catholic, but he's just not trying to be an apologist for the church. And he says he produces in there the CIA documents that says white smoke went up, Syria was elected and shoved aside. So can I give you Google search words or a website, or what's within the rules of Coast?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. Okay. Art never liked to do that because he thought somebody was always trying to push something, and about half the time he was right.
There's no selling on this website, and it's only 3 articles. It's called October1958.com. That's October1958.com. And at the bottom of the white smoke articles, you have links to 3 other articles, but there's no advertisements on it. So for people interested in like 2012 and the 2012 and that type of thing, I can finish up by saying these prophecies, these would be anti-popes. John the 23rd, John Paul II, Benedict the 16th. In our view, those who follow this thesis, these are anti-popes. They're not popes. There's been 39 major anti-popes in the history of the church. Some have occupied the Vatican, and the 3 days of darkness or whatever is going to cause this chastisement will be very rough for mankind. But at the other end, a true pope will be restored in the Vatican. The world will be in a period of peace, and that's according to the Fatima prophecies. And I know you, on Coast to Coast, you've had a few Fatima guests on over the years, too. So I just thought that might be interesting for people. There's also on Wikipedia, if you look up SIRI, S-I-R-I, there's pros and cons, because there are some people who have believed this at one time, like Hutton Gibson, the father of Mel Gibson. He believed this thesis at one time. He's turned against it now. So if people want to kind of see a pro and con, they could go to Wikipedia and look up SIRI, S-I-R-I. So I just thought that might be interesting to people, especially since the question that guy asked, how can Benedict the 16th be calling for a world, a world bank and all that type of thing?
You know what? You're very articulate. I'm just curious. How do you know these things? I mean, what motivated you to get this deeply into it?
Okay, I was again born in 1953, raised a very good, in the traditional sense, Catholic education, and I fell away from the faith in high school and college. Of course, a lot of high school and college kids like to fall away from the faith because nobody likes rules in any era. But then in 1974. When I learned when abortion became legal and I was trying to find who's doing all this, I ran into a priest named Father Francis Fenton, and I don't think there's anything about him on the Internet. He passed away. And when I saw him in this speech, I expected to hear a political speech. And when he said the name of Jesus, John, he bowed his head. Now, at 19 years old, that sent a shockwave through me because this had quit happening in the Catholic Church at Vatican II. So I then looked back into it, ran into this fellow who wrote these articles, Mr. Gary Giuffre, who is a portrait artist, his portrait of Reagan is hanging in the Reagan Library. And when I saw this research at October1958.com, I believed it was true, and I believe this is about the most important subject in the world. And so, and I might add that if you ever wanted to have this fellow who authored these articles as a guest, I promise you would have one of the most interesting hours, on Coast to Coast, because this information is very hard to find, even though it is in these major books that I mentioned and in a number of other sources.
A lot to learn in so little time. Listen, stay in touch by email, and I really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm sure.
Thank you, John. You too. I really enjoy when you're on, and I enjoy the others too. But good luck to you. Okay.
Same to you. Have a great Christmas. Okay. That was very interesting. I thought that was very interesting. See why this Coast Insider thing is a good idea, because I'm going to get a bunch of emails saying, "What did he say?" And it's like if you're an insider, you can just go back and listen to the show, and it's cheap, and it's a good tool. All right, Jonathan in Hotlanta, come up on the bridge if you are still there, Jonathan.
Yes, how you doing, Sir George?
Doing all right. No, I'm not George. I'm John.
I'm sorry, John Wells. I apologize.
No worries. I've been called way worse than that.
No, I apologize. I was listening to the show. It's always good as usual. And the key thing here is, as far as a listener, I love the show, and for the audience too, the key thing is the amount of deception that we see that's in the world. It starts at an early age in terms of indoctrination to belief systems that are there. But when you look and go back into the ancient text and you read and you come forward, you find out that a lot of the things that we have accepted as truth are extremely difficult when you look at them in their correct light. The teachings, and when we talk about the matrix, is basically, John, you speak about it like in the third person when you say taking the red or the blue pill and can we awaken ourselves? And I think we're in the latter stages now, the latter age of this particular time frame. As far as it relates to specifics, the Vatican has bank holdings in the Bank of America, and that's probably one reason why they don't speak a lot about or speak out about the world banking system as a whole, because of their holdings, which are a part of the system. As we come to find out now, the Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express. There are a lot of key elements in our upbringing and in this structure which are absolutely false. And I think the people in the listening audience, we need to look inside of ourselves, and we need to be truthful, and we need to start seeking the truth earnestly. We're talking about love. It's going to be extremely important now, because the game plan for us is to have us all tagged and chipped here soon. The breakings out of world wars, third war, keep us preoccupied. There are a lot of trillions and billions of dollars passing hands in the game of war. Ideologies created to make men separate themselves along lines. And when we go back and look at the Gulf of Tonkin, which started the Vietnam War, or we look at the U.S. Liberty, and we look behind, if people would just not take everything that they hear without researching and looking at it, they'll find that there's hidden agendas in almost everything that we see through mainstream media. We need to be careful in the last days, and we need to prepare, because they're trying to corral us like cattle and like sheep and send us over the edge.
Understood.
And, they're planning World War III. They're planning on putting us into camps. They're planning on taking the food supply and a whole host of other things that the common person wouldn't dare believe would take place, but it's in the scriptures. We've been warned that if we wouldn't pay attention, they took the commandments out of the school. We look into our world, the United States as a whole. There's killings, pedophilia, murders, prostitution, all kinds of cronyism, theft, and burglary. It's become like second nature now. So there's not that much time left. And
Jonathan, thank you very much for your call. Those were some serious words of wisdom. And you know, a lot of people say, listen, we enjoy the show, enjoy your guest, whoever the guest might be. The thing about it is, I'm not getting any satisfaction. I can't get no satisfaction, to use the Rolling Stones verse, about what exactly do we do about it. I will offer this. This may be simplistic. I don't like to think of myself as a simp, but compared to some people, I'm simple. There are some really brilliant people out there. Anytime you have power, it is human nature to want to bend it to your own uses. You join forces with other powerful, that was the whole thing. Arranged marriages. You consolidate your social, political, financial power, and you hold on to it, originally for the benefit of your family. But as you become more powerful, there's a song, I think Morcheeba does it, called Everybody Loves a Loser. Well, why is that? Well, it's because they're humble at the state of their quote-unquote quote marks around the loserness. They're humble, and they're easy to get along with, and they're, unless they're desperate and crazy, forget that, that's an extreme. The problem is a lot of people, once they become successful, they become the object of certain names to describe their behavior. Is because if you're not careful, you'll lose your humanity. Hence, all those references in Scripture to it's harder to get a rich man into heaven than it is to pull a camel or a burro or whatever it was through the eye of the needle. That little narrow passageway in there. That's true because money changes you. So this is what I would offer as a partial solution. And keep in mind, this is not going to happen all at once. We have to get a lot smarter very quickly. I've made comments regarding Occupy Wall Street saying, I admire the fact that you are exercising your constitutional right to assemble for the redress of grievances, but you're barking up the wrong tree. If you want to change things in this country, you go to the place where the policy is made. And that, my friends, is Washington, D.C. You approach your politicians. You email them, snail mail them until they have to listen. And you tell them, look, you're not going by this Constitution. And I tell you this, don't ever turn loose of that Constitution. There are people out there that want to experiment with socialism. They want to experiment with communism because, capitalism's a terrible thing. These other two entities have been, the socialism and communism, it's been tried. There are plenty of books out there that'll tell you what the result of those two systems, the citizens who are under those systems reap misery. I believe it was Churchill said the chief virtue of socialism was shared misery. Now, it works if you have a small country, but when you have a great big country like this one with over 300 million people in it, that's not going to work because there's going to be a percentage of non-hackers that are going to pull off of the system, and another group that's going to learn how to manipulate the system. So if you want change, you go to your leaders. Your leaders in Washington, D.C. are the ones who call the shots. I am neither left nor right. With a few exceptions, I would say fire the whole bunch and replace them with coast-to-coast listeners. I think we'd probably get this thing straightened out pretty quick because we know when we need to hit back, and we also know, I believe, collectively, what to do to avoid having to hit at all. Maybe just a good glare every once in a while will be enough to chill out some of the overly ambitious in the world of geopolitical annihilation. Juneau, Alaska. Do we really have a caller from Juneau, Alaska, named Jeff?
Yes, sir. Permission to come aboard.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine, sir.
Permission granted. What's on your mind?
John B. Wells, I hope, I really am starting, it kind of connected to me that I may have manifested Ian's problem worse so that I could hear you more into my ignorance. So I wanted to do that, and I hope that didn't happen. But
well, the relief of ignorance is an ongoing deal, man. I mean, that's just an evolving mechanism. The relief of ignorance. I'm working on it even now. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, in the sake of brevity, I wanted to engage the flux capacitor with you for a moment and take you back to the summertime when you did the Coast to Coast show and you commented about the Reno air crash. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you remember my email that I sent you about that?
Actually, I do.
The board game?
Yeah.
And the reference to chess and all of that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is me.
Okay.
So, and I read, oh, that's groovy. I have been, every time I hear you, I'm wondering, what are you going to bring that up or not? Anyway, but what I wanted to do was, I wanted to turn on your guest. Your guest today was the most fantastic guy. But I wanted to point out something that he said. Do you remember when he talked about the mistletoe thing? Or I believe it was it might have been the reference to the holly, but I think it was the mistletoe about the guy dies 3 days later, up, rises again. Like, seems to be a common theme. And I wanted to say, all of the comments that we get about this thing that's happening, that's going on, which is really going on here for this 2012 thing. Everybody seems to be concerned with the foam on the top of the sea, and they don't realize that that's just the foam on the top of the sea. What's making that foam is the ocean below it.
That's
and when
correct.
you get down into the deep ocean, it's surprisingly how simple it all is.
You know what? That's absolutely true. Jeff, if you've got a final thought, wrap it up, man, because we are pushing the clock really hard now, and I want to get Bob in before we have to go tonight.
Okay. I wanted to just make a note about our clock that we live by, this thing. If you look at the clock, you'll see that there's a circle with a dot in the middle of it. And anybody that knows anything about astrology will know that is the glyph that represents the sun, or your sun sign. If you look up your astrology sign, you'll see your sun sign will be a circle with a dot in the middle of it. Well, that's exactly what a clock is. And those 12 numbers that go around the outside of that clock, they represent the Earth's path around its star. And if you look at the trines, which are triangle shapes that are made up within those 12 things, you'll find you'll find that the 12 houses of the zodiac are represented on the clock, because that's what it is.
Interesting.
It's a Sumerian wheel. It starts out in the number 1 with Aries, and then it goes to Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. If you look at the water signs, which are the 4, the 8, and the 12, you draw the triangle, draw the lines between those three, you'll find a triangle there. And then you look at the Earth trine, which is the 10, the 2, and the 6, and you draw that, you'll soon see a Star of David pop right out of there.
And?
That's where it comes from. And then the air and the fire signs oppose that with the Star of Solomon, which is just a Star of David turned on its side. And you'll see the crosses that all run through the clock too. You'll have each member of all of the trines represented in all of the crosses, and there are
Jeff, I got to go, pal. I'm sorry to cut you off, my brother, but and Bob, I'm sorry we didn't get to you, but look here. The most valuable gift you can give your family, your friends, your loved ones is your time. Time is truly priceless, and after all, you have all the time there is. I won't talk to you before Christmas again, but I'll talk to you on the 29th, and then in 2012 I'll be on Saturday nights. For George Norrie, Lisa Lyon, Dave in L.A. Controller, Art Bell, who started it all, thanks very much for being with us tonight. Merry Christmas.